Sounds good.
You're great.
Okay, so we have so everybody, welcome back from lunch. I hope you had a nice break. We have two more presentations this afternoon, both from U of L folks. So I'll be doing the introductions for the next two. So first up will be Courtney and Trish, and after that will be Tessa. Tessa is going to, after Courtney and Trish's presentation, put something in the chat, a survey. So keep an eye out for that. But first, we'll start with Courtney and Trish. I know Trish is dealing with a few technical difficulties, so we can kind of see part of the tech crew. But Courtney is the head of the Bridwell Art Library at the University of Louisville, and Trish is the collection manager. Courtney, tell me if that sounds good. Otherwise, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. All right, all. Hi, I'm Courtney Stine. I'm very happy to be here. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see our slides. All right, and hopefully everyone can see that. All right, so today we are talking about object-based instruction, teaching with artist books. So who are we? Well, I'm Courtney Stine, and I am the director of the Bridwell Art Library. I'm an associate professor here at the University of Louisville. And my colleague Trish Blair is our collections manager. Trish is also here and just working through some technical difficulties, so just bear with us as we get those resolved. So a little bit about our library. So we're one of 6 libraries at the University of Louisville, and we are dedicated solely to the visual arts. Our collection of over 92,000 volumes focuses on the history of art, studio art, architecture, and design. We are located inside the same building as the Haidt Institute of Art and Design, which provides an opportunity for embedded librarianship as we see and interact with our colleagues and students in the arts every single day. Our library's mission is to support U of L students, our faculty, staff, and community users by providing print and electronic resources in art history, theory, studio art design, and curatorial studies that feature a diversity of perspectives. Also fostering the discovery of art information through creative and scholarly research, critical thinking, and visual literacy. I wish that all this Zoom stuff would stop appearing. Can everybody see that, or is that just something that I can see? Let me know if there's a way that I can get that to stop.
Also, your slides, Courtney. I think
okay, perfect. There's a whole bunch of Zoom stuff that keeps popping up, but if y'all can't see it, then that is perfect. So our vision is to realize our potential as the only academic library, to our knowledge, dedicated solely to the visual arts. Not saying to the fine arts. I'm looking at my Karen, I have a colleague, Karen from UK, who I see is here. Love you. But to specifically the visual arts in the state of Kentucky. So this vision is the motive for sharing this presentation today, an exchange that we hope will foster connections with our library colleagues in our wonderful state of Kentucky. And so the outline of what we're doing today. This presentation will share how object-based instruction is a useful approach for teaching critical thinking and research skills. We will begin by defining object-based instruction and how it can work within a library instruction setting. Next, we will introduce our artist book collection and share how we teach with artist books, matching books with a class, instructor, or an assignment. We will also share how our artist book collection is relevant outside of the visual arts, and how we plan to utilize object-based instruction to increase our reach across the university. Trish will, fingers crossed, everything is fixed, do live demonstrations of selected artist books on camera so you get a sense of each object and how we might teach with them. We believe exposure to artistic representations of challenging themes, personal experiences, and current events can be transformative for student learning and retention of complex ideas. Finally, we will ask you to reflect upon what you've heard in this presentation and how it can benefit your own teaching. We hope you will leave today with an understanding of object-based instruction and appreciation for artist books and ideas for how to incorporate objects into your teaching. So I've been at U of L now for 5 years. And at the art library, I am not only the library director, but I'm also the only librarian. So I do all of our library instruction, which can include anything from a library orientation to information literacy sessions to teaching with artist books. I primarily work with students in one-shot instruction scenarios and encourage them to make research appointments for further in-depth help with their research topics. When we teach with artist books, we are teaching with objects, but I only recently connected our teaching to object-based instruction as a pedagogical approach. So what is object-based instruction? So it's also known as object-based learning. It's probably more commonly referred to that, or OBL. And it's a student-centered active learning approach. It uses objects such as artworks, photographs, and artifacts as the basis for teaching a lesson. The goal is for the object to invoke a sense of curiosity, to connect students to the past when applicable, and foster deep critical thinking. Object-based instruction is a standard approach in archives and special collections libraries, since those people are used to utilizing objects in their teaching. Usually it's very collections focused, but it's not as well known or used in library instruction. So how does it work? Object-based instruction works best when it's tied directly to learning outcomes and goals, particularly those that value problem solving, peer-to-peer bonding, and creative expression. One important outcome for library instruction is the iterative nature of inquiry. Asking questions and seeking information is an integral part of the research process and corresponds directly to research as inquiry, one of the threshold concepts in the ACRL framework for information literacy for higher education. Once object-based instruction is selected as a pedagogical tool or approach to the classroom, the instructor then will select their objects and gain access, whether that's actually bringing the physical object to the classroom or having a digital representative online. So while it is rooted in engagement with 3D objects, 2D objects like photographs, videos, or digital representations are also suitable, and in fact may be your only option if you're teaching in an online setting. The lesson can then be planned around students interacting with the object to achieve the learning goals and outcomes. And there's a few links that we'll make sure that we put in the chat. One of them is a guide from the University of Miami that I found very helpful for getting a better sense of exactly what object-based learning or instruction is all about, how it can work. There's some examples of lesson plans and assignments across all disciplines, ranging from the humanities and the arts to STEM to health sciences, and how object-based learning has been adapted by faculty in those areas. So moving on to artist books. If you're unfamiliar with artist books, you're not alone. Artist books are often a new medium for our students. We usually introduce the concept of an artist book by sharing this quote from Joanna Drucker, who is a highly regarded book artist and a professor emerita from UCLA. In the Century of Artist Books, Drucker says, artist books take every possible form, participate in every possible convention of bookmaking, every possible ism of mainstream art and literature, every possible mode of production, every shape, every degree of ephemerality or archival durability. So, artist books can take on practically any form, from the traditional to the experiential, and beyond just about any subject. What sets artist books apart from, well, I guess books that aren't considered artist books, is the intention of the creator to use the form of a book and the artistic qualities presented in the materials, the structure, the design, and the creative process. Additionally, because we encourage students to touch and interact with the physical form of the artist books, it provides a tangible, hands-on learning experience that can be transformative for making a connection to these works and their meanings. Not only are artist books aesthetically pleasing objects, but they serve as a type of primary resource that showcases contemporary voices. We especially enjoy showcasing artist books that highlight underrepresented perspectives or marginalized communities. These objects provide rich material for discussion and exchange of ideas in the classroom. We have a collection of over 600 and growing artist books. We store the collection in the art library's rare book room and archival boxes, as you can see here on the slide, and access is by appointment only. Although browsing the physical collection is not possible, our Artist Book Index digital collection, more will be discussed on that later, makes the artist books accessible to U of L students and beyond. We also maintain a LibGuide that serves as an entry point to our collection. It features an A to Z list of artist books by title or artist, as well as resources for further research. And that link will also be shared in the chat. We teach several artist books classes each year, primarily to students in studio and design classes. We work closely with faculty to select books based on a few different criteria. So structure, or the physical shape, binding, and sewing that make up the book. So an example might be an accordion fold. Materials used in the creation of the book. So an example could be handmade paper. Techniques used to create the art object. So an example would be screen printing. The way it visually represents a subject of interest, and class themes and topics. Our intention is to facilitate discussion of complex topics, encourage thinking critically about issues, provide a starting point for further research, or again, since we work so prominently with art design classes, to inspire students' own creative expression. Often this collection is used as a teaching collection for students who go on to create their own book forms, their own artist books, or other creative works. So here's just a couple of photos from artist book sessions that we've done in the last couple of years. On the left is a bookmaking class. On the right is a printmaking class. We were inside the printmaking studio. So usually, well, actually, we do both. Students will either come to the library and see the artist book collection inside our instruction room, or we will bring the books to students in their studio classroom. So it just kind of depends on what works best on the space, how many students we have, and the best fit for that specific class. So we're going to share 3 areas that we've partnered with in a selection of books that we typically show those students. So the first is printmaking. Printmaking is perhaps the most traditional art discipline that uses our artist book collection. The focus for these classes is on the materials used, especially because our printmaking professor is known for her research in paper handmaking, using native flora and non-toxic methods, or the techniques that are used to create those books, such as letterpress printing, because our students do have access to a Vandercook press and do letterpress printing in the classes. And now I'm going to see if Trish is able to come on, if her technology is working on her end, so she can talk a little bit about some of these examples.
All good on my end.
Perfect.
So this book is called Paper from Plants, and it's by Peter and Donna Thomas. Donna is the illustrator in these books, and Peter is the bookmaker. Paper from Plants is a cross-section of paper made from local plants by America's hand paper makers. It represents all levels of expertise and can act as proof that beautiful paper can come from plants with a bare minimum of expertise or equipment. Influx Structure, a topography of ghosts. This book explores human systems, both natural and artificial, and how we use the earth and our bodies to communicate and navigate space, showing the interconnectedness of each system.
All right, so graphic design. It's our largest program in the Hyde Institute of Art and Design, and perhaps the heaviest users of our artist book collection. The department teaches a course formerly known as Book Forms, which has an assignment called the 5 Things. Students must interview someone they know to identify 5 things that are significant to that person, and then incorporate those 5 things into a creative work using the form of a book. Since artist books can take on practically any form, the sky is really the limit on how students interpret this assignment and what they ultimately create. We attend their presentations where they bring their works to class and then share a little bit about the person they interviewed, what those 5 things are, how they created the book. And we will exhibit their work if we don't have an ongoing exhibition in our exhibit case. The books that we choose for this class usually incorporate objects or individual elements to kind of give them an idea of how to incorporate 5, different elements or things into their book to provide inspiration and aspiration for this assignment.
Reliquary, a collection of objects from the Mojave Desert by Carrie Mickey Lonnie Schroeder. This book takes forgotten items around the Mojave Desert and incorporates them with text about loss, memory, and decay. The structure of this book unrolls to show one element at a time, and the adjacent marks reference the hobo code to navigate safe travels. Women Dream by Elsie Vastall Ellis. Women Dream explores gender boundaries as expressed in Judeo-Christian Muslim constructs, specifically the invisible and visible boundaries that women face universally and the resulting conflicts that arise between men and women and the consequences of women in the spaces of men. The boxes represent the walls that individuals place between themselves and the world and what those challenges represent.
Last but not least, our artist book instruction program has grown to include an ongoing partnership with an English professor who teaches courses on the history of the book, culture and text, and the future of writing. Students usually speed date with the selected artist books and choose a book to write a brief reflective essay. Often these are scheduled in 2 classes. So the first class is the speed date, and then the second class is where they select a book of their choice, spend some good time with it, and work on their essay. Questions we may present to these students when we're doing that speed dating class is, what is a book? What does a book look like? What elements of a book make up a book? What elements of a book are present in this book? What do you think the artist is trying to convey, and why did they choose this medium?
Leaves of Grass by Lauren Emirates. This book examines ideas central to Whitman's writing, transcendentalism, or the inherent goodness of nature, and realism. It captures the complexity and simplicity of nature by juxtaposing the paper grass with a quote about nature and wonder, an art object that encapsulates the feeling of Whitman. Gertrude Has a Few Questions by Emily Martin. This book uses Shakespeare's play Hamlet to examine the invisibility that women feel when growing older. Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, examines the actions of the play by a series of questions that she poses throughout the book, such as, is this entire play an example of toxic masculinity?
Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Trish is going to be on camera with a few selections from the books that we just shared and demonstrate exactly what they look like, how they work, all their components, and you'll be able to see them. So what I would suggest doing is pinning, Trish. So if you click on those 3 little dots in the top right corner and then select pin, that will pin her screen so you'll have a bigger view and be able to see all the details.
Okay, this is influx structure, or a topography of ghosts. This book has iron filings enclosed in a glass container, and they are gathered with a magnet when the book is closed. When the book is open, they fall like formless dust. The book has a map fold structure that when you unfold it, shows many different types of printmaking skills. And the structure allows the layers of this book to be peeled back, layer by layer, alternating between the minuscule and the immense. The text of this book alternates from prose to cited research. Reliquary. This book has a rolled box structure that showcases the found objects encased in plastic with questions posed to the reader about loss and memories. Each object corresponds with a symbol from the hobo codes. For instance, the 3 nails here symbolize the 3 lines that tell the travelers that this is not a safe space. And the very last image is a intentionally blurry photo to show where in the Mojave Desert these books or these images were found. This Gertrude has a few questions. This is a book with a magnetic closure that has loose folio pages written with the same exact image, but at the bottom, it'll have the actual line from Shakespeare that the question is asking. For instance, this one says, in the rank sweat of an unseamed bed, stewed in corruption, honeying and making over a nasty sty. And Gertrude asks, is this what is called slut shaming? So each one has a different quote and a different question. The author likes for these to be done in the exact order I'm showing you, as to that's the story she's liking to tell. This book is called Women Dream. And it is a 3 nested boxes inside of a enclosure that falls down. Each one of these has different words in Arabic and English on this one. And when you undo this one, it has different comments about women in the world of men. And then you do this one, and it ends on a statement that says, if you think too much about walls and rules, you will miss out on happiness.
This one would be Lexington campus, or Leestown campus.
Thank you, Trish. So I'm going to reshare my screen. We have one more show and tell that we're going to do, but we're going to go to.
What was that? She transferred a chat to you. Who did?
Beyond
Maria.
the Arts now.
Oh, I'm on the session. Okay, that's
okay.
probably why I didn't get it, but
Okay.
I'll look. Yeah, I thought she saw that was in the
Everybody
schedule.
can
I'll
mute
grab
their-
it, but if she's
Okay.
asking, yeah, just tell her I'll.
Okay, sorry, I was able to mute that person. Okay, so we just shared some of the classes that we typically work with, and now we're going to move to some of the books that we have in our collection that could speak to classes beyond the arts. So now that we've collaborated with English for a few years, I wonder what other classes, faculty, and disciplines could be next. We are often asked what books we have on certain topics, but the nature of cataloging artist books makes it difficult to find those answers when searching just our OPAC. We're going through our entire collection right now and identifying each book by subject and genre. Once that project is complete, we will share this information on our collection LibGuide, which is already searchable by A to Z lists of the artist name or title. That will give us a holistic perspective of the strengths and help us identify potential gaps in our collection. Using object-based instruction as our framework and the subjects represented in our collection, we will promote teaching with artist books beyond the arts. Here are some of the subjects and books we've identified that could be relevant to many classes at our university. And a disclaimer, our selections today do skew towards the humanities, but we do have many books that relate to the health sciences and STEM fields as well. So the first subject is anti-racism. Artist books can provide an anchor for having a productive dialogue around difficult topics such as racism, segregation, and enslavement.
Unbound by Jessica Peterson. This book recounts the history of the Prince Edward County, Virginia school system and their decision in 1959 to close all public schools rather than comply with the desegregation of them. While they opened a private school for white students with government subsidies for tuition, the Black families received no subsidies and therefore could not afford the new school system. 4,000 Black children went without education for 4 years. Each star in this book represents a child who went without that education. Why the South Demands Corrected Textbooks by Catherine Buckley. In 1919, the United Confederate Veterans began pushing the newly formed Textbook Commission of Alabama for a revision of history to not criticize the Confederacy in all new textbooks. Using copies of actual documents of that era, this book shows the persisting influence of the lost cause mythology in education and the insidious truths it relies upon even to this day.
The physicality of the book form defies censorship in that it creates a permanent home for ideas and gives them a lasting legacy.
The Record by Anne Covell. This was the first book Courtney purchased specifically with library instruction in mind. This book serves as a fantastic introduction to the Internet Archive and the necessity of preserving and making information accessible. It showcases the differences in public policy between the Obama and Trump administrations on January 20th, 2017, when the White House website was changed to reflect the election and the Internet Archive's quest to preserve the entirety of the U.S. federal website in real time.
We recently focused our collection efforts on increasing the visibility of LGBTQ topics, such as marriage equality and gender identity. Last spring, we worked closely with a queer theory art history course to get input from students to help us make those selections.
Wrongly Bodied, Documenting Transition from Male to Female by Clarissa Sly. This photo book documents one person's journey to transition from female to male in North Texas in 1996. Through this premise, the author wants us, the reader, to discuss how we construct ourselves within the confines and restrictions of the time and place in which we were born.
Our collection has many books by and about women through the lens of feminism.
American Breeding Standards by Elaine Knudsen. American Breeding Standards explores the complex rules that define a good and bad horse using American Horses and Horse Breeding Standards by John Diamond, with defining what makes a good and bad woman. Women March by Gail Watson. This book serves as a photographic record of the 2017 and 2018 women's marches in Denver, Colorado, in response to the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States.
Since we are in an election year, artist books on topics such as voting and democracy are especially relevant.
A Primer for Democracy by Bonnie Thompson Norman. In this class-designed project, the book uses notched note cards that the reader can put together in any manner they desire. Each card has either an alphabet letter with corresponding words relating to democracy or statements about democracy. It is a call to exercise your rights, but to not forget your responsibilities as a citizen.
Are you still there, Trish?
I can hear you, but I see nothing.
We
Okay.
can see your slides.
You're not able to see the slides, Trish?
I can.
No, I see nothing, Courtney.
Okay, can you, so ballot box is next.
Like, I don't have computer screens. I only have microphones.
Okay,
Okay.
so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen anyways, and then we can go through the second iteration of our show and tell. So Trish, does that mean that you're not able to share your video?
No, I am not.
Okay,
I cannot share anything at the moment.
okay, I'm sorry. U of L uses Teams. Maybe some of your institutions do as well, and I think coming over to Zoom just creates a whole set of technical difficulties. So in that case, we may not be able to do that show and tell. I'm on a completely different floor from Trish and where those collections are. Otherwise, I would just jump in and show you. But perhaps I can share my screen again. Okay, so everybody should still be able to see that. So ballot box, so this is a literal and symbolic representation of a right that should be available to all Americans, but is being threatened or eroded in current times. Each panel contains quotes about voting from historic and literary figures. The book's shape is a box that can be formed in several ways. So perhaps you see here, it just kind of looks flat, almost like a book, but once you start opening it, all of these different panels are sewn together and can be configured in lots of different ways. But ultimately, you can create a cube-like shape that resembles a ballot box. And I'm going to go back, if it will let me. Okay, my apologies. Since we're not able to show these in that more live demonstration mode, there may just be a couple of things that I want to add about how we might use these in a classroom setting. And so what I love about this book Unbound is the power of seeing how each star is meant to represent an individual. And you can hear that 4,000, Black children were not able to go to school because the public school shut down because they didn't want to desegregate. But I think when you actually see all of the stars represented in this book, there's just an element that visual provides that transforms sort of your understanding and empathy around this topic. And this Why the South Demands Corrected textbooks is sort of the closest thing that we have to almost teaching with archives, if you will, because they're essentially facsimiles of various historical documents, such as pamphlets, letters that showcase the reasoning behind different ideologies that either they wanted included in textbooks or wanted excluded from textbooks in the state of Alabama. And there's so much that you can do, like in a history course, using this as a starting point. The Record, as mentioned, was one of the books that I bought specifically with information literacy instruction in mind, because it does showcase the Internet Archive, but in a visual way, right? We can go to the Internet Archive website and, the Wayback Machine and see what a website looked like a couple of years ago compared to what it looks like now. And that is very useful. But I think this book does a really beautiful job of showcasing, perhaps side by side in an artistic way, what impact some of those changes on the web can have. We were going to show this Women March book because it's just fun. It almost mimics a board book. It feels very much like a board book with its heavy cardboard construction. And then it has the little fuzzy pussy hat on the cover, meant to mimic some of the hats that women were wearing during the women's marches in 2017, 2018. And when you open it up, there's some really beautiful photographs documenting that specific march that occurred in Denver, Colorado. And I love actually this image that our student photographer took of a primer for democracy, because you can really get a sense of these various pieces that are in this book. They're just stacked from A to Z. It's almost like an abecedarium, so an A to Z list of various parts that make up our democracy. So A for amendment, B for bravery, C for citizenship, D for democracy. I have a baby, so this is like very much the type of book that I'm reading on a regular basis right now. But you can configure these different pieces in really cool structural ways to kind of make your own little democratic statement or show different values. And so moving on, so what are the next steps? How do we plan to extend our library instruction with artist books beyond the arts? Well, our first step is to create an object-based instruction guide to promote teaching with objects from our collections to faculty across the university. The guide will feature ideas for classroom activities, lesson plans, and assignments. We will promote this guide and our collection to faculty in specific disciplines, as we have mentioned here, but also broadly just across campus, through promotional means like U of L Today, which is our daily email digest that goes out to all U of L employees and students. We plan to host an open house sharing our artist book collection with the university community, perhaps collaborating with the art galleries. They do these occasional like coffee break in the gallery events that have been really popular and successful in getting people that may not often come to gallery openings or into the art building into our space to enjoy a coffee and then kind of walk around the galleries. And so that might be a good time to do an artist book open house, perhaps showcasing things that might be related to the exhibition. Finally, we also hope to collaborate with our colleagues in archives and special collections on teaching with objects, as well as research assistance and instruction on promoting artist book collections to faculty in their assigned liaison areas. So some of my colleagues who are in REI who are presenting this week or who are here on this call, let's talk. Our artist book index was mentioned earlier. This is our digital collection, which has high resolution photographs of our artist books, along with metadata describing their structure, materials, and techniques used in their creation. The digital collection is available to anyone with internet access, allowing students to view our collection on their own terms and making it accessible to users beyond the U of L community. We are working with an online English class this fall, and students will be using the API in lieu of visiting the artist books collection in person. So we would love to hear from you and talk a little bit about object-based instruction. What have you gotten out of this today? What have you learned? How does object-based instruction apply to information literacy or other types of instruction that we do as librarians? I wanted to just mention that on a personal note, I want to challenge myself to incorporate object-based instruction into my information literacy classes. So in other words, I've shared a lot today about how we teach with artist books in classes that are kind of meant to utilize those collections, but in classes that don't have that as the focus, how might might I still be able to use objects in my pedagogy? So, one idea that I have is about bringing an artist book related to the class theme and using that as an icebreaker to introduce, hey, we do have this artist book collection, but also to connect with students and then encourage interaction with library materials. I could use that object as a starting point for research by asking questions like, what questions do you have about this object? Where would you go to look for more information? What keywords would you use to find some scholarly sources, in JSTOR, for example? Well, as a teaching librarian, we often don't get a lot of time with students, but I have found that there is some flexibility, often more than we give ourselves credit for having, in how we formulate our lesson plans. So we may be told what to teach, but we're not always told how we teach it. So if an instructor says, hey, I want you to come and talk to my class about using JSTOR, and you've got 15 minutes, maybe bring an artist book or an object and then use that as a starting point for formulating a research topic that then you can show, okay, so this is how you would search for, more information on this topic in JSTOR. That's just a really quick example of how I foresee object-based instruction being incorporated into the type of instruction that we do as librarians. So if you could put your answers in the chat. The first question is, how do you think object-based instruction is applicable to information literacy? And hey, if you don't think it's very applicable, I'd also love to hear that. This is kind of a work in progress and something that I'm just starting to really work through, and I'd love to hear feedback from you all. What ideas, if any, do you have for incorporating objects into a future lesson plan? Maybe if you already know you have a class that you're teaching this fall, have you been inspired? Do you have any ideas of how you might do that? And then for fun, if you could access any collection in the world to teach an object-based lesson, what would you choose? And while you're all thinking and answering away, here's some images of our cats. On the top, those are my cats. Nugget is the orange cat. Biscuit is my tabby. This is a photo that showcases their personalities perfectly, with Nugget being a ham in the center of attention. And this was Biscuit trying to spy, but also hide from our cat sitter. And those are Trish's cats down below. That's Violet and Roberta. All right, so I'm seeing intertextuality comes to mind, a starting point for exploring other related materials. Ruth says textile. Ruth, I'd love to hear more about how you might foresee textiles being incorporated. Esther says food waste. And Karen, thanks for affirming that idea of potentially using an artist book to kickstart a workshop about searching in JSTOR. Courtney says, I am always fascinated by scholarship that stems from personal interests. Object-based instruction is a great way to get people to think creatively outside the box when it comes to research and scholarship. And yeah, that's exactly the whole intention of this. Photography, always. And you can bring a photograph, right? So you can show something online. But if you have an actual physical photograph, students don't see those very often. They don't have to get to interact with an actual photograph. That can be really fun. So FYW, first year workshop. Students had to come in with an object. The goal was that they would research the provenance of the object. So they came in with baseball mitts, trophies, stuffed animals. I love that idea of asking students to bring objects to class, have them do that. A great alternative to the traditional image critique essay. Love the idea of using these to personalize the experience of something related to the human body for health sciences. Yeah, we didn't talk a lot about health sciences or STEM, but we have a lot of artist books that do touch on those topics that would be a fantastic way to incorporate objects into teaching in those disciplines. And so I want to be mindful of the time here. It's 1:46. I haven't seen anybody talk about what collections they would love to have access to. So Please do share if any come to mind. Trish had a really great one. I don't know if Trish is able to come back or has access to her camera, but there's a really cool cat museum, I think, in North Carolina, and that was the one that she was going to choose. And
It's
my
called-
background is in, oh, go ahead, Trish.
I'm back. It's called the American Museum of the House Cat in Sylva, North Carolina. And if you're interested in lucky cats, there's a lucky cat museum in Cincinnati.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you all so much. If you want to get in touch with us, we can be reached at artlib@louisville.edu. We'll also put a link to the Art Library's website in the chat, and you can also follow us on Instagram at Bridwell Art Lib. We often do a weekly artist book, close look up with some images and more information about objects from our collection. So please reach out if you have any suggestions on how we can collaborate across our institutions and libraries. And we appreciate you all being here today. Thanks.
Thank you to Courtney and Trish for the absolutely fascinating presentation. My thanks to both of you. So next up, we'll have in about 10-12 minutes Tessa, but for now we have a break for the next 10 minutes. So we'll see you all back around 2 p.m. But however, Tessa has pointed out, and I'll remind you, there is a survey or an assessment in the chat to take before the session starts. So if you could go ahead and do that and then take your break, or take your break and then go ahead and do it. Either way, we'll see you back in about 10 minutes. Thanks.
Matt, do you want me to go ahead and share my screen? Because it has the link too, so people have the visual reminder as well.
Please go ahead.